up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are back with another training camp breakdown, another training camp takeaways video for the Detroit Lions. Today was the first joint practice day against the New York Giants, and man, it was fun. So let's get it started. Welcome, everybody, to a video. Glad you guys are here, and yes, we are back with another one of these training camp videos, and today we are here to talk some joint practice. This was awesome to get to see us against another team. Now, for a lot of the day, most of my notes come from the offensive side of the ball. They have the two fields side by side, so on the other side, it was our defense taking on their offense repeatedly, and on the side that we were on, it was our offense against their defense. I could have peeked over there and maybe seen a couple of plays, but I just decided to focus on our offense, and then next time I go, which is tomorrow, hopefully I can get more of a look at the defense for a majority of the practice. That way I can get both sides. Although at the end of practice, they came together, they went versus each other for like 20 minutes in total, and I did get some notes from the defensive side of the ball. It was kind of like a red zone situational type of drill, like from the 20-yard line, but I did get some notes from the defense because of that. We also have some injury updates. Again, not all of these are necessarily confirmed as of right now, the time I'm recording this video, because this is like right after practice. I got home, made sure my notes were looking good, and then I got right to recording. But I'll go through what we kind of know so far, or some of the things that I took away in terms of the injury side at the very beginning of training camp. First off, Jameson Williams was out there today. He competed in team drills, individual drills. He was out there. Jameson Williams was good to go. I know there's been a lot of questions like, is he there? Is he not there? He was there today, so that was great to see. There was no Jonah Jackson today. In his place, we saw guys like KO step in. We saw Darren Paulo play a little bit at the left guard position. We got a lot of different lineman looks. Now, again, it was difficult to really get a good sense of how each offensive lineman was performing versus their defensive line, because when they did those individual drills, they were behind the end zone, like on the complete away side. Like, there was no way you could see anything over there. So I didn't even try. I was like, look, preseason's coming up, first game, we can get a lot of our notes there. But for this, it was very difficult to really see those drills. The ones that were right in front of us were our receivers against their defensive backs. Now, they also had going on at the same time tight ends versus linebackers and running backs, and as well as on the backside, they had our defensive backs against their receivers. But right in front of us was our receivers against their DBs, so that was my focus. Once again, tomorrow I'll try to get looks at different groups, but I just wanted to focus on what I could see and try to get the best notes for today, knowing that there's a second joint practice, and we play this team on Friday, so we can get looks at all of it then. So I just wanted to focus on what I could see and try to get the best notes possible. So no Jonah Jackson or Denzel Mims today. According to Dan Campbell, it sounds like it's not necessarily serious, so hopefully that is the case and it's not super serious. I'd love to see Denzel Mims on Friday. I think the preseason is going to be very big for him, considering he's missed some time now due to injuries at training camp. I think preseason is going to be extremely important for him to try to push into a roster spot, because some of these young dudes are out there making plays and we just aren't getting an opportunity to see him. Jonah Jackson, I think we're all confident what Jonah Jackson is going to be, but he was not participating today. So got to look at some other guards. And actually, the offensive lineman that we signed yesterday, Hart, who played kind of the tackle / sixth offensive lineman kind of role with the Buffalo Bills this past season, he did get the snaps at guard from what I saw today. The notes that I took, he was lining at the guard position. So I kind of had an idea that that's where they would get looks at him. Maybe it was just because of just Jonah Jackson missing some time that they wanted to get another body in there, and that makes sense. Jefferson was also out there today, so that's fantastic. There was the one practice where it was like he's just not there. Jamar Jefferson was back, and he made actually a couple of good plays that stood out. One touchdown he scored on the day when they were in that final situational type of drill, and it got everybody kind of fired up. So it was good to also see him back on the field. Teddy Bridgewater sounds like maybe sometimes next week we'll get Teddy Bridgewater in and we'll start to see him a little bit, and hopefully same thing with Emmanuel Mosley. But I'll leave it there. Now let's dive into some of these notes. Let's get straight to it, because we got a lot of notes. Again, a lot of it was from the offensive side of the ball, but at the end I did get some from both sides of the ball, and tomorrow I'll try to get different looks from defense, those kind of things. So let's start there. Let's start with the individual drills, DB versus receiver. So these are our receivers against their defensive backs. They mixed in some corners. They mixed in a couple of safeties as well. And of course, it started off with Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get the name of each quarterback that was throwing. I should have focused on that a little bit more, but I did get the names of the receivers and the DBs for the most part. Amon-Ra St. Brown essentially just leaping over the cornerback and making the reception. I mean, he was pretty well contested in terms of step by step with him, and it was almost kind of like not necessarily your back shoulder throw, but it was a little bit like back to the football, and he kind of just like went right over top of him and made the reception. St. Brown today just like it has been when he's played against our guys, has been dominant. And he was dominant again today. Every time it seemed like we went to him, he had a reception. Individual drills, he was dominant. He's just different. He's just different. He can separate. He's got so much nuance to his route running, and he catches everything. He legitimately catches everything. Jamison Williams, who I didn't think had the most success throughout this drill. Timing still seems like something that can be a little bit hit and miss. Maybe not as bad today. The first note that I had, he was matched up with a Dory Jackson, and it was contested really well. He was kind of running just a little bit of fade / fly route, just kind of working down the field, but it was contested really well. There was another route a little bit later that I had noted, again, against a Dory Jackson, who's a veteran corner. He's been in the league, so, you know, he's a proven cornerback against a young receiver that's still kind of figuring it out. And the other rep that I had him listed for, he ran like an in-breaking route, but there was a lot of movement to it, and I thought the timing was thrown a little bit off. And the main thing was, it was just like he wasn't able to create a lot of separation like maybe he wanted to heading into the break and then getting out of the break. And it seemed to kind of throw off the timing a little bit of the entirety of the play. He started to pick it up. He showed some flashes, especially as practice got going on. Jones Jr., who beat Amani Oruwariye, the former Detroit Lion, working an in-breaking route and then back to the football. Marvin Jones Jr. made some disgusting catches today, specifically in team drills. His hands were incredible today. How about that man, Khalif Raymond? We've talked about him a lot in terms of his route running. Really continued to show up today against just a different opponent. And look, Khalif Raymond, I believe, has been one of the best route runners. It's just a little bit difficult because of his frame sometimes, especially when you start to work downfield. But in terms of like just underneath, you know, where you're working some of those underneath routes where he's a little bit easier to hit, I mean, this just seems like nobody can keep up with this guy. We'll continue to see that, but it just seems like no one can. He was matched up on Nick McLeod, and he absolutely shook him on a slant route, created tons of separation, and had a reception. Then it was Josh Reynolds, who I had listed with an incomplete pass. I thought the timing was a little bit off. He did create some separation at the top of the route. I believe he was matched up on the young safety, I believe out of Iowa, Dane Belton, but that pass fell incomplete. Again, he created some space at the top of the route. The timing was just a little bit off on the ball there. Then it was Dylan Drummond. Now, Dylan Drummond piled on another really strong day once again today. Like Dylan Drummond is, at least in practice, he's a very consistent receiver for them. And he was also getting some reps. For example, he went to some 7-on-7 looks with Jared Goff in that first team offense. Now, they mixed in a lot of guys, but he would get some looks in there, and he had a reception in that drill as well. Here, the first note that I have is him drawing a pass interference. I mean, it was a great release from Dylan Drummond first. There was a lot of shake at the top of the route, and he was able to force a pass interference call, and that's just as good as a reception, I mean, for the most part. His route running, he's able to create space, and he's very reliable with his hands to what we've seen at this point. How about another guy that I thought had a very strong day today? We've had like here and there notes about him, but I thought he put together a really strong day from start to finish, even in special teams drills. Antoine Green. We were kind of waiting for a day like this where he really felt good about what he did. Antoine Green, I thought, put together a really well-rounded practice today, and it started off with a deep shot that was a great ball, you know, on the left sideline, just working deep over top. It was a great ball. It was a bucket reception for Antoine Green, but at the same time, I mean, he had a really strong day, and that's kind of what he's known for, is his ability to get over top. What really flashed to me was his ability to win underneath, and I thought you saw some juice there when he was just going through like workouts earlier in the week, but then you saw him matched up one-on-one, and he was able to separate, and you're like, oh, hey, his route tree could legitimately be expanded beyond what some people's like vision is, that he's a deep threat, but he showed some ability to win beyond just like that. Reese Alexander, who had an incomplete rep, he was matched up with Trey Hawkins, who is just a big cornerback. He's 6'3". It was on kind of a comeback, working back to the football type of route. Then it was Trey Quinn, who had his pass broken up, working a fade route out to the sideline. Now, Trey Quinn definitely bounced back, had some good plays in there, but the first one was broken up. And then Avery Davis, who I thought struggled a little bit through the one-on-ones, just in terms of the notes that I had here, working on these individual drills, or I say individual, but I guess it's like 1v1. I don't know, whatever you call it. I thought he had a little bit of a rough one. Avery Davis is one of our more recent receiver signings that we added. This one, it was kind of like a quick curl route. It was like on him very quickly. By the time he got out of the break, the ball was like right through his hands. So again, you talk about timing there, just seemed to be a kind of a tad off. Like I wrote it down as a fastball. Like that thing was on him in a hurry. Just looked to be a little bit of a tad off there. Then I had a contested grab for Chase Cota, who made some plays as well in these drills, to Amon-Ra St. Brown, who had just an easy win at the line of scrimmage. I mean, again, he just looks different when he's out there. Easy win off the line. Then he caught the pass over his shoulder, just made it all look so fluid. Khalif Raymond, who had another really nice route, an out-breaking route, got separation, although the pass was just a little bit too far in front. This one was from Jared Goff, I believe, just a little bit too far in front. Wasn't way off, but it was a little bit in front there, but it was still a really nice route, so I had to take note of that. Marvin Jones Jr., who had his pass broken up, he was kind of working again like another little bit of those fly/fade routes towards the sideline a little bit there. Then it was Nick McLeod again, who got matched up on matchup on Maurice Alexander. And this was one of the more impressive finishes because not only did he draw a pass interference call, working kind of a in-breaking type of route, but on top of that, he also finished the play through the contact and still came up with the reception. Josh Reynolds, who I had kind of slipping at the top of his route, he's working in breaking route, fell down, ball was thrown, but he never even really got out of the break. And we saw a couple of those like kind of back to back. Yeah, actually the next play was Dylan Drummond, who had an incomplete pass. He was also on the ground working an out-breaking route. So we saw a couple of those. Now, how about Trey Quinn? And this has kind of been, I feel like, the name of training camp for him. It's been bouncing back. Like, okay, oh, that wasn't the best. And then it's like, oh, okay. And then he comes back and makes a play. And here you go. It was a nasty comeback route win. He's very good at this. And we saw this against our team when he was working some of these one-on-ones as well in the red zone. And it was a nasty comeback win, once again, comeback route win for a guy like Trey Quinn. His ability to separate at the top of routes. You see some of the flexibility in the top of the routes, the way that he really sells at the top of the route. We had Avery Davis, and this rep was not great. I mean, the cornerback was literally on top. It was almost like he was running the route for Avery Davis. It was kind of like a go ball down the right sideline, but it was Nick McLeod once again, like a decision thing. You run the route and he throws it, but it was an open one. And number two, he was like seemingly running the route for him. He just sat basically on top of the route, caught the pass, and picked it off. So that was the one interception. We have the drill, but yeah, there was basically no separation there whatsoever. But then again, I had a good note for that man, Antoine Green, and this was the one that impressed me a lot. I started on the play. It was an underneath, kind of an in-breaking route, just a few yards, and you saw, not only today did you see the quickness underneath, you saw the ability to win off the line, and I was super impressed by that. The ability to win at the line of scrimmage was huge, and this was a beautiful win underneath, finishing with the reception. And when he starts to open that up a little bit, and it was a similar route to what you'd see him do in like some of their individual drills before practice, and he's not running, he's just running against air, and you see some of the juice underneath, like, all right, that looks pretty good, but he's still a big body. To see it against a defensive back from another team and his ability to still separate, it was like, man, there's some versatility potentially in his game. Like I said, I think he's a big run after catch threat, more so than I would have expected when I got into watching the player, and to see some of these wins were promising. Jamison Williams, once again, now this time he did have maybe a step over top, kind of running that go route. This one I think was slightly underthrown. The cornerback was able to get back into it. It was actually broken up. Wasn't by a ton that it was underthrown. He probably had a step. It would have had to be a really good ball, but at the same time, he did get a little bit of a step over top, and we know that's kind of his specialty for what we expect there. Chase Coda I had with another win on an in-breaking route. Then it was Khalif Raymond, who worked just a nasty. He worked like a hitch and go, but then at the top of the route, he broke it down into a comeback. I mean, it was disgusting, and he got through it so quickly that the timing was on point. I still have to talk about this year's sponsor for the football season. I'm very excited about this, and I really appreciate this opportunity. We have partnered with BetUS, man, and BetUS is a leading online betting platform that offers a wide range of sports betting and casino games. Now, BetUS has a reputation for the reliability, their security, and their excellent customer service, and there's a lot of ways to get in touch with them. And it's very easy to sign up. So all you have to do is click the top link in the description. They're hooking you up with some nice bonuses. So if you click that link, top of the description, you can claim some nice bonuses. All you have to do is sign up. It's like 2 pages, very easy to sign up. Then you can claim your bonus. You can see there's multiple different bonus options. You make your deposit, and if you make a minimum $100 deposit, you can get a 125% match on that deposit. So they're hooking you up. BetUS has a lot of different ways to bet, so it's not just football. I mean, they hit on all the major sports: football, basketball, baseball, soccer. I mean, hey, if you're into soccer, there you go. Heck, they got esports on here, man. There's tons of different ways to do it, whether that's, game props, pre-game betting, whether that's over-unders, whether that's future bets, live betting as well, including parlays, so you can build out your ticket and do things that way. If you're a returning member, there are 5 currently re-up promotions. There are 6 listed currently sign-up promotions. Through BetUS, you become a loyal member to BetUS, and this leads to other perks, including free payouts, free monthly tournament entries, bigger bonuses. I want to shout out to BetUS. I'll have something very creative going forward for this, but for now, shout out to BetUS. Also listed St. Brown was on the ground as well. We were kind of like, oh gosh, is he hurt? And he was fine. He was fine, but he was going into a comeback route, kind of slipped, fell at the top of the route. So we saw a few of those. Then it was Maurice Alexander, who I had his pass being broken up by Trey Hawkins. Trevor Jones Jr. Now, he started to do this in the team drill, so this wasn't just these one-on-one drills, but he had a beautiful catch. It was contested. He high-pointed it at the catch point. And we know that a lot of his routes get contested, but the ability to finish was really shown off today. Like, he rose to the occasion when the pads were put on and you had a guy across from you, this man rose to the occasion today. Then I had Dylan Drummond, who got a little bit over top of the route. Now the pass was low. I think it was based on where the cornerback was. It was almost like either he underthrew it, or because he could have went over top, or it was one of these things where he tried to kind of fit it in front of the cornerback, because the cornerback was kind of on the inside hip, and he ended up kind of staying it low and away, and he tried to attempt to make a one-hand grab. It was close. It ended up falling off, but it was a good attempt for him. And then he finished it off with Josh Reynolds with a good rep, which I think he needed, which was a one-handed grab over shoulder. It was like a soft touching pass, and he just kind of easily snagged it, caught the ball, and that ended the drill there. And he moved on to those 7-on-7 drills, so basically just no trenches, no sacks. So when you're watching it, you could say like, oh man, this was great, but you also have to keep in mind like there's a pass rush, and in this there really isn't. So when a quarterback held the ball too long, I kind of marked it like, yeah, that may have been a sack, and there was actually one that really stood out. But for the most part, it was a really good flow. I thought the offense did really well today, like seriously. And you go through this drill, I don't think I listed an incomplete pass on the entire drill. Now, one of them I had, the ball was held too long. Some of them were just underneath passes, so they weren't like significant plays. So some of those like, okay, it was caught, but it was like 2 yards. But I thought it was really good in terms of just the way it was flowing. Of course, it started off with Jared Goff, and you could tell exactly where he wanted to go immediately. You had Amon-Ra St. Brown in the outside slot on his right side. He ran kind of a curl route, and again, it's kind of like when we slowed it down. I'm sure this video might be somewhere, but at the top of the route. So he runs the curl, but he doesn't just stop there. His ability to work back to the ball, like we saw in some of the highlights, he works back to the ball, basically cuts in front of the defender and makes a grab. That's why the quarterback has trust in him like he does. Yeah, he catches everything. He's a great route runner, timing, all those things. But when Goff puts it there, he can trust that St. Brown's going to fight in front of that defender. So I can see the defender, put it still there, and trust that he's going to cut across his face and come up with that football at very least. And that's exactly how the drill started off, and I thought that got him going. Then they came back to Jahmyr Gibbs, who ran kind of an angle route. It created a little bit of a window underneath. Biggest thing here to me was the separation he created out of the break, just the speed that he had, the straight line speed, and I think he's starting to pick it up a little bit more and more as these practices and days goes on in terms of the receiving side. It was Dylan Drummond next up, who, like I said, he was in here with, kind of the first unit, who was mixing in, but it was a corner route. Now they did kind of a little bit, I think it was like a little bit of a high-low look, like they've done a lot, but it was a really nice grab. I mean, it was a pretty good throw as well. It had some velocity on it, working a corner route to the left sideline, but it was also a really nice grab. I think he went down with the ball, so there wasn't a run after catch there, but it still was a nice pickup for him, and it was really nice to see him get that. And then they went right back to him with another impressive catch. Now, originally, you could see Goff wanted to go to Jameson, because Jameson just got right off the line, had to step immediately. But I don't remember exactly. It may have been the cornerback allowing to do that because the safety immediately slid over top. So they kind of bracketed him in. So it was one of these situations where Goff looked there like he was going to let that thing go. Safety rolled over. He's like, nah, I don't want that. He ultimately came back to a Dylan Drummond breaking middle of the field, who caught it in traffic through pass interference, still came up with it. I was like, dude, I mean, look, if you're reliable like this with your hands, it's going to be hard not to make the team. I will tell you that. I moved to Nate Sudfeld, and it started off with Maurice Alexander on a grab, crossing route, just showing off that speed, straight line speed, basically. One thing I've loved is the way they've utilized guys to their strengths. Whether that's Denzel Mims and how he's been attacking zones, working middle of the field, not asking him to do all these underneath breaks. Whether that's a guy like Maurice Alexander, man, we're using to speed. We're going to talk about Sam Laporta soon. The way they utilize Sam Laporta's athleticism, the movement pre-snap. Let's get him off the line of scrimmage. Let's allow him to get leverage here. Let's match him up on a backer. Let's come out heavy personnel, move him around. You're seeing a lot of that. And that's an example there from Maurice Alexander. Then it was a little flat route that they threw out to Josh Reynolds. Again, Jameson Williams here pulled the defense over top, so it opened up kind of that zone hole. They had, Jameson Williams just run vertical, and it opened up a wide open Josh Reynolds underneath. And then it was Jameson getting his first reception here of this drill. And again, another concept that we've seen them do a ton, where they kind of run the hitch with the tight end, and it pulls down that linebacker, and then right behind it, they like to hit the speedy receiver running that deep dig route. That was Jameson Williams. So I believe it was Brock Wright that kind of sat down underneath. Behind that, they had Jameson Williams just flying across the middle field, and he flew right into that zone hole, made his reception, and it was nice to see him catch that. But we've seen that concept a lot from the Lions. They moved to Adrian Martinez. He got a couple of reps. It started off with a little stick pattern from Daniel Helm, who's been getting some reps with the third team today, and then it was Antoine Green. Beautiful. Beautiful win at the line of scrimmage. The release was amazing from Antoine Green. Got downfield, created separation immediately, and that set up the entire rep for him because, yeah, it was a nice grab working back to the ball, but the entire thing was set up because I was sitting there watching, and you could see him. I think he was working on the right side here, and immediately you saw him win off the line. It was like, oh, he's got him immediately. Then at the top of the route, set everything up, created space, caught the ball, but it was from the line of scrimmage. That's going to be a big part. If you can consistently win at the line and you have that threat over top, the ways they can be utilized seems to be kind of expanding. And if the Lions keep seeing that, I think they're going to be very excited about what they have here, especially if they get some special teams work out of him. Back to Jared Goff. Here's some of the notes I had. They came out in like a 1-by-3 set. I made some notes of this just in terms of where receivers was lining at, just to get a visual idea. So they had 1 receiver on the left, 3 on the right side, and they hit Amon-Ra St. Brown with a little quick hitch, 5 yards on the play. They came back to Khalif Raymond. This was nice because it was a very quick read. He was on the outside, and Jared Goff quickly recognized off coverage, hit the quick little hitch route. It was a 3-by-2 set. They kind of came in there, so they were really running spread offensively. Again, there's no trenches in this either, so it makes sense. Then it was kind of a balanced set. They gave a 2-by-2 look, and it was a very similar look to what we've seen in the past over the last couple of years. It was the short in motion for Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he kind of jogs in a few yards, and then they snap it as he's moving. He drags middle of the field. It was like that. You know, they back him up. He hits it underneath. Easy kind of like zone hole hit. You know, you pull the linebackers back underneath and you drop it off to him. So it wasn't a big chunk, but it was something very similar to what we've seen in the past. It was back to Nate Sudfeld and Martinez to finish up this drill. First off, it was Jamison Williams. I like this a lot. Here's what I liked about it. He ran it really well. He ran a speed out route. And what I liked is they're playing him a lot in slot alignments. They're playing him a lot in those spots. They're getting him off the line of scrimmage. But this kind of route can really play to his strengths. You get him on the move, you get leverage, and then you allow him to just run through speed. No one's going to keep up with him. And that's what he did. Ran that speed out really well. I loved it. At the top of the route, he stayed really like flat to the line of scrimmage, so it didn't fade over top. And he was able to get a reception there to start things off. Then it was Maurice Alexander in a balance set, catching a little pass underneath. And then it was, again, Dylan Drummond with a little spot route. Not a big pickup, but a few yards. Finally, Adrian Martinez finished it off with a slant to James Mitchell. He was lined on the far outside as a tight end. It was late in the progression. You could see he kind of went 1-2, worked to his third, which was James Mitchell. So the timing was on point. And then the final one, which was kind of a spot route, it was completed, but he held the ball way too darn long. I mean, it would have been a sack or whatever. It probably would have been. And in that case, I'm not going to really count that once. That leads us right where we want to be, and that is the 11-on-11. So it was offense, defense, and really for the most part, it was just kind of working reps here. And then at the end, they kind of went into sort of a situational look inside the 20, and they mixed offense, defense, teams, and things like that. But for the most part here, it was just kind of getting work. First team, second team, third team. Different offensive linemen, different receivers, different packages. They actually pulled some offensive linemen today. Not a ton, but they had some movement there outside of just zone run. So there wasn't a ton of like, trick plays. There wasn't a lot of that. I think it was relatively vanilla in that sense, but for the most part they did kind of expand upon personnel that they would get in different packages. Start off with, of course, the first team. I had a little run there for David Montgomery behind the right guard, followed by a rollout flat pattern that he hit to David Montgomery. The reason I noted this is because Montgomery had a beautiful one-handed snag. I mean, it wasn't the toughest catch and reel, but it was a one-handed grab. It was very athletic underneath to pick up a few yards on that play, and then it was a stuffed run at the line of scrimmage. The run game was not great today. Again, it's very vanilla. You have a lot of moving pieces. There was no Jonah Jackson, so a lot of things to keep in mind. I think we'll get a much better sense on Friday where we can really see it better, but it wasn't great today, but there were a couple of spots in there where things did seem to go pretty well. Here's what I liked. The last play of this first unit before we went on to the second unit and continued, it was an incomplete pass, but it was Sam Laporta, and it was like a cover one look defensively, and they motioned him. They had a short motion in, so he basically stacked up tight to the line of scrimmage. He started out wide, motioned in, now they created like a stack look, and then he released, and I think he basically just released, vertical, kind of like a fade vertical from that alignment, and it matched him up, one-on-one on the play, and he just used his speed and got a step. What I liked is the trust to put it out there. I think what's going to happen is more reps, that pass hopefully won't be as far in front. It'll be one of those things where you trust it a little bit more and you trust to kind of drop it more than really playing on more of the air of caution side. Not to say that he did, but it kind of felt like that. Regardless, though, it got Laporta a good matchup and they went at it. And I think you're seeing that now they're utilizing him in matchup spots. Today was another fun day for Laporta. Not because he went crazy, but because of the utilization. You just watch the little things that they're doing with him. You're like, oh man, they're really feeling good about what he can be. Same thing with Jahmyr Gibbs, honestly, in a sense, but I love the way that they're using a lot of these weapons to their strengths. The next group was Nate Sudfeld, of course, and it started off with James Mitchell, who had his pass broken up. It was contested really well, kind of dragging middle of the field. Then, as I touched on, they put Jamison Williams in the slot. However, it was a short run for Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, the offensive line we were kind of looking at this point, Jermaine Ifedi at right tackle, sitting next to Colby Sorstel, Ross Pierschbach blocker or Pierce Baker.
Now, I will note this. I didn't really get many notes from individual drills when it comes to the trenches, and I have a few here from offensive line, which we'll touch on, but I don't bring up Ross Pierschbaker, who I felt was pretty steady in terms of pass protection, at least from that center position today. So I do want to give him some credit. I thought he looked very steady in pass protection today, and I didn't count, or there was no obvious blown blocks from him. Could have missed something, but I didn't see anything like that.
Ross Pierschbaker at center. At left guard, they put Darren Paulo, and then Matt Nelson was sitting at left tackle. But again, this mixed and moved around a lot. You had a little swing pass around to Jahmyr Gibbs. On top of it, you saw that they had Jamison Williams on the same side, I believe. Maybe not, but they had Jamison Williams running like that deep kind of curl route back. We've seen him run that route a few times, so I'm sure they're really trying to hone that kind of route in. Hey, look, eat up off coverage and then get back to the football. We've seen Khalif have success with that. They got to be thinking you can have success with that. We just got to hone it in because Khalif can do it. We saw it against the Jets. They're sitting off coverage. Eat it up. Back them up. Get them to open their hips and then work back to the ball. We can have success there. The positive is that they kept putting him off the line of scrimmage. I think that's good for him. I think you even saw in some of the one-on-ones, the lack of separation at times against a guy like Adoree, the physicality that he gets immediately off the line of scrimmage. And I think he'll improve here, but it is seemingly a work in progress, and we saw that last year. So it's one of those things where you get him off the line, and he doesn't have to deal with that. Sometimes he still will have to, but if you could stack him up, kind of keep him out of those spots, you're going to have to do it at points. But if you can, it can help him out a little bit. Dylan Drummond, who I had with another contested grab, breaking middle of the field, what I liked about it. Now, a lot of these are contested, which isn't always ideal, but what I liked about this, there was communication between Sudfeld and that side of the field pre-snap, so clearly there was a really good connection there pre-snap for him to then go to him on the play and have a reception. Then it was that man Martinez. Now, the offensive line at this point looked like Obina Eze now at tackle, next to Hart, who is a new offensive lineman we picked up yesterday, playing the guard position. Cecil was aligned at center, and then you had Logan Stenberg and Connor Galvin on the other side of the field. So that's kind of what we got in terms of a third string type of unit look at this point, but again, other players came in as well, but I just noted that down, so I wanted to point that out there. We had a little outside zone that was ran by Justin Jackson. It was a big run. He broke it right off the right tackle, but it was just pretty bad contained, so I think that one was a little bit more on the defense, not playing it very well. Followed by a swing route from Adrian Martinez into the flat, few little yards there, and then they went back to the first team. Like, all right, let's go see the first team again. Couple little notes I had. JC Gabinda getting a lot of reps there, right? Mixing in and out. A lot of personnel looks. 13 personnel, 11 personnel, meaning like one running back, one tight end, 3 tight ends, 1 running back. They did a lot of flexibility in terms of how they're going to do things. I think the first time we saw them out there, I mean, they showed some pistol looks. First time we saw them out there, I mean, they had fullback on there. They showed some eye form. So it's like there's a lot of flexibility within what they're doing offensively, and I gotta believe, based on what Dan's told us in the past, they're gonna want to keep that. Start off with little play action rollout to Sam Laporta. Now the big thing here is that it was an RPO look. I couldn't tell exactly what the O-line was doing, so it could have been just a pure play action. But the big thing here is that what they did for Laporta was they just said, hey, we're gonna make this simple for you. We lined you on one side, and we're just gonna have you drag the field, cross the field, because we saw yesterday Barnes couldn't run with you, and Barnes can move. We know that. So we're going to just cross you on the field. We're going to keep trying to get you on backers, and now we're going to have Goff roll that direction. And his ability to just fly across and scream across the middle of the field, picked up a reception on the rollout to the right. A lot of moving, I thought, of the quarterback today, and it kind of leans into some of these guys like Laporta. I mean, he's obviously going to have success there because of his ability to separate, so that's something that we're going to have to look out for on the season. He's also shown some flexibility to catch those passes as well that can be a little bit off, and we've seen it. I mean, at Iowa, his ability to catch a flat and then just make like 3 guys miss, we've seen a lot of those kind of looks for him, so it makes sense lines are utilizing there. But to what Ben Johnson told us, I don't know if it's Ben Johnson or was it Dan or was it Brad, but I think it was Brad, that it's not just, he's not an inline tight end. I mean, he is a movement receiving piece. He is slot, he is wide, he is movement piece that catches the ball. Like that's where you're going to see the biggest impact to me from a guy like Laporta, specifically in year 1. Short little run in there. I had Brock Wright mixing in as well, so we got to see that. Then it was Laporta again. He tried to get a play action shot. He kind of ran like an out and up pattern, and he ended up drawing a flag on the play because of that speed. I believe they had him on a linebacker on the play, and he drew the flag on a play action shot. And it's like, hey, that's as good as, a reception basically, because we'll take that. And that's just because of the movement skills that he has. They went back to Amon-Ra St. Brown underneath. He had a reception on Trey Hawkins. Off with Jahmyr Gibbs. Not much on this run. You did like the movement. I mean, what you saw at Bama with some of the quick cuts that he can make. Start off with an outside zone, and it was kind of like bang, bang. But he kind of cut back into the opposite side edge rusher, and it was shut down for a no-yard gain. Thing is, we do a lot of zone running, at least now, We'll see. I think it'll be more mixed during the season. But when you zone run, you got to lean into their ability to utilize that vision and find those little creases. I'm not saying they are or they aren't doing that right now well as the running back position, but it'll obviously be something to watch on Friday. That's a key of that, right? Gap's a little different. You know, you have a pulling lineman, you follow lineman, that kind of thing. But it's different when you're asking the running back to utilize that vision, because sometimes it seemed like we had good push, but it would still be a TFL. And if the running back doesn't find that hole and they continue to bounce, if it's an inside zone, if they bounce back, or it's a split zone and they continue to bounce out of it, you're going to have things like this. Not to say that this is what this was. It looked good movement-wise, but it was shut down on the play. Now, here's one lineman I did circle because he did pop on this play. That was KO'd, who was lined up at guard, and it was a great block. He was lined up at right guard, sprung a big run for Jahmyr Gibbs. We didn't have a lot of these today, but there was one here, and that was led by KO, just leading the charge with a really nice run block running right behind the right guard. And one thing that I think we noticed a little bit last year is we almost had more success when we went to some of our depth pieces at guard, running behind them, whether that be pulling them or just running behind them in a zone run, rather than necessarily having them on the backside, where if they can get miss off the line of scrimmage, it shuts everything down off the backside. You have to have those movement skills to kind of seal off your backside. So I think that's something to keep an eye out again as well for preseason, is who are we running behind, and also how do those guys handle the backside. And then Adrian Martinez again finished it off. The offensive line at this point looked like Ryan Swoboda, Hart at guard, Ross at center, Stenberg at guard, and then Obina at the other tackle position. And start off with a short run, followed by a sack, and that was the end of the drill. Continuing on, as we continue to look at some of these notes here, let's talk a couple special teams notes, and then we'll finish up with offense, defense. So they were doing kind of like the gunner drill, where you had one gunner, two guys, protecting, and it was just a drill of that. A couple of guys that stood out to me as they kind of mixed both sides here. A couple of guys that stood out to me. So first off, Lions players being utilized as gunners, trying to beat two blockers. I saw Sterling Thomas. He was shoved out of bounds on his, first attempt. Iffy was also pushed inside, so maybe lost some of that outside contain that he would have been looking for. Dylan Drummond, I thought, had a little bit of a better rep. It wasn't perfect, but it was a little bit better. Then they flipped it up. We saw Anthony Pittman and Derek Barnes, working down without kind of the outside help. He ended up kind of splitting the two, so that wasn't ideal. And then our guys back at the gunner reps. First off, it was Antoine Green. If you don't know what that is, it's the outside guys on a punt play. So it's the guys that kind of flying down on the sideline. They're trying to push them out of bounds. It started off with Antoine Green with a gunner win. He was one of the guys that had one of the best reps. He won against two guys, and I was like, hey, he did good receiving, and then he does this. Looks like a good day for him. Chase Lucas, he was pushed out of bounds on his rep, and then it was finally Tay Hayes who put up a strong rep. I thought he had showed a nice little swim move towards the end there to kind of separate from a blocker, but again, Antoine Green probably had the best rep of it. Offense, defense still. We'll kind of mix this back in. Started off with David, and I thought he really showcased some good vision here with an inside run, followed by a play-action sack. The first unit was not sacked much at all. I don't even know who the sack was, but it was a sack on a play-action play. Just did not happen much. The ball was getting out quickly, those kind of things, but in this case, it did. And then it was a short little outside zone run. Now, continuing on, we had Sam Laporta, and here's what I really started like, was the quick finds. They were cranking up some heat. We were allowing free guys to rush off the edge on some of our bootlegs and things like that. And we also had some blitzes coming in. And the fast recognition and confidence, like, oh, it's getting out there quick. That was big. You can see the timing within this offense feels like it's on a pretty, I don't know if I would say ahead of schedule, but it seemed to be in a good spot in that sense, not taking sacks left and right. And to start off with a flat to Sam Laporta, there was pressure to his left, immediately found the little flat route to Sam Laporta. Short run. Back to the second team, probably Nate Sudfeld's best play of the day, where it was a deep dig route middle of the field, and Sam Sudfeld absolutely just threaded the needle between the coverage. The big thing here was it was also a really nice grab, because I think it was a little bit behind him trying to thread that needle. I believe it was Maurice Alexander on the play, but it was also a really nice throw for him to just squeeze that ball in there. That was pretty good. I also noted on the next play, good pass pro on the very next play, and it allowed Marvin Jones Jr. to basically, as they kind of say, on your head, baby. That's what Marvin Jones Jr. did to the cornerback. Went right on top of dude's head, made a contested grab. Adrian Martinez came back in, and it started off with a short run, followed by probably his best play of the day. So two good plays here from the quarterback. This thing was beautiful. This thing was absolutely beautiful. There was, it wasn't his initial read. He was looking middle of the field. It was an out-breaking route, and that was to, I believe that was to Trey Quinn, yes. And you saw him in the pocket, like kind of stepping into the pocket with an offensive line right in his face, throw it through a window. He's not the tallest quarterback, so he's got to be able to find those windows in the offensive line sometimes. And he basically flung that thing through a window. Arm angles, it wasn't straight over top. He kind of had to redirect his arm, fling that thing through a window of the, basically beside the guard, and it flew to Trey Quinn, who made a nice little out-breaking grab. Best play of the day, I think, from him. It was pretty because you could see from our point of view, literally it just open up and you just see him fire it through there. That thing was beautiful. Started off with a play action to Khalif Raymond. There was pressure in his face again, and this is what I liked. It was a very fast find. So it looked like they had crossers going all over the field. And for Goff, what was nice about it was a play fake, and I could see why he would want to go first to the right here. But with the pressure coming off and screaming off the left side, he went towards the pressure and fired it immediately to Khalif Raymond. The timing was beautiful, just flying across the field. It wasn't late. It was nothing like that. Like, it was on time, on target with the guy running straight at him, put it on Khalif Raymond, and they picked up a crossing reception there. It was just a very fast read, followed by a David Montgomery short little run there, but it was like probably 4 yards, and they were pulling offensive linemen, so it was nice to see some of the mix up there in terms of scheme. Another flat pass, this time to Jahmyr Gibbs. What was cool about this one is that they came out in the pistol, so they gave you another different look here. Cornerback brought the blitz, had to get the ball out very quickly. It may not have even been a blitz. It could have just been that he was unblocked, but Jahmyr Gibbs just leaked to the flat. Guy was in his face immediately, found Jahmyr Gibbs. So just getting the ball in their hands, not taking sacks was probably the biggest takeaway from this little stretch they had here. Now, there was a false start mixed in, which wasn't great. Not a lot of false starts today, but there was one here. I'm not sure who exactly it was on. Little underneath pass to David Montgomery, and then Sudfeld got back onto the field. Short run, but a really good block that I noted from Brad Cecil, who was aligning, getting some reps at center, as we saw today. Then, talk about flexibility. Find Jason Kabinda in the slot, motion him across. Now, the issue with this play was, I don't think it was a jet motion, but the issue with this play is, as he came around, may have been a jet motion, it was almost like he was confused whether to split zone block or if it was going to be leak out. Maybe it was supposed to be chip flat. I don't know, but I'll tell you this. It looked like Jason Kabinda leaned into making the block, and the quarterback was trying to throw it to him. It was disgusting. It was kind of ugly after the cool movement. It was not very good, but, you know, you did see them move him around a little bit, so I guess that's something there. And then they came back to a counter run, so again, you saw some more flexibility, and that was Jahmyr Gibbs who picked up a few yards. I mean, it was okay, but it was cool to see them utilize, again, some different looks offensively with a counter run, allowing the following some pulling offensive linemen there. And actually, on this play, it may not have even been a pulling offensive lineman. It could have been just a zone counter, and it was a tight end working across. Regardless, he was following somebody on the play, so I can tell you that for sure. And then they went back to Dylan Drummond, open space, caught a little pass underneath with a lot of space around him, and then it was Adrian Martinez who took back over, starting off with a little bit of a scramble. It was good pass protection. Obina Eze, I noted on this play, he was lined at right tackle. It was a good example. Anchored down, held up well on the edge, sat himself down, held up the block, really just kind of shut down that. I think that was something that we've seen as an issue for him, just to balance, and he's always looked like he's tumbling over last year. Like, for that to look really much more fundamental. We'll see what it looks like when you get a preseason look at it, and he'll get a lot of reps, but that was a good example. Obviously, I didn't note him every play, but that play I was focused on him, and it looked really good. It looked really good in terms of the anchor that he utilized there. And then it was a short little run behind the left guard. Back to the offense side of the ball, right before we went to kind of the scrimmage look, it started off with a toss to Montgomery, then a short run. Then it was Amon-Ra St. Brown who ran kind of a speed out. He had a reception, followed by another run that popped a little bit. KO led the way from the left guard position there. Sudfeld getting back on the field, tackle for loss, trying to run the football. It was a little flat play then out to Brock Wright, and then finally really good pass protection, which I noted on this play for across the board. And you could see him, he was kind of running, he kind of like leaked out and kind of ran like a little bit of a fade, and he tried to adjust his body. You saw him kind of like working, contorting himself. He just couldn't finish and come up with the football. It's cool to see some of the athleticism, but he was unable to come up with the ball. Us back to Adrian Martinez for a couple reps. A short little run by Jermar Jefferson. Picked up a little bit of a medium gain. It's again something that we saw a lot on the day. The fast motion that rolled into a speed out route that was completed, and I believe it would have picked up a first down. And then it was back to some of this punt return work. Couple guys that stood out to me here. First off, Tracy Walker. He and Starling Thomas had a good rep, but it was really Tracy Walker. They were blocking the Gunners at this point, so it was two of them versus one. Tracy Walker started off really well with a really nice block as it kind of worked downfield. He reset himself, put up a nice block. They were getting kind of feisty with the defense there. Will Harris lost his block on this. Then I noted a Savion Smith who was called for a hold when he was trying to protect a little bit here. Khalif Raymond then got a return. He actually returned it for a touchdown, which was led by Anthony Pittman. It didn't really it wasn't like completely full on, but it was led by Anthony Pittman, Jason Kabinda, and Malcolm Rodriguez, and he ended up actually scoring a touchdown, getting right upfield on the punt return. Again, there was no Gunners on the edge, but he did take it back. Brady Breeze and Stephen Gilmore then working, kind of protecting once again. You saw some feistiness from a guy you saw some feistiness from Brady Breeze talking to the other team, and they had a good rep together. Hayes and Brian Branch, and I thought they ultimately lost the block. And then finally, it was a feisty rep there from Starling Thomas once again, working with Brandon Joseph, the safety. How we finished it up. So we went offense and defense, first team, second team, kind of mixed in some reps here, even third team. 20 minutes, not a ton of plays, but we got some notes for it. So they were like at the 20-yard line, and they kind of like worked to punch the ball in the end zone. I think sometimes they were touchdowns and they're just like, okay, we'll just run the play again. Other times they're like, oh, they didn't get that, and they kind of like moved forward. So some of them I think were kind of tight, but the point is that they kind of moved down the field and then they flipped. And the offense, who I thought had a really strong day, was strong in this area, and the defense actually flashed some things as well. The only main note that I got defensively was that Starling Thomas had a pick play through on the opposite side of the field. Outside of that, though, like I said, I really didn't see anything. So this is the first time I got to look at him. First thing I took note of, C.J. Gardner-Johnson was lined at safety. Brian Branch was in the slot. He's been playing really well. He was starting. Tracy Walker was not on the field to start. And it started off with, guess who? Of course, Aiden Hutchinson. Very first play, lines up on the right tackle, boom, sidestep, which we've seen now a lot of times, the agility, bop, bop, inside, sack, immediately clean. It was a little zone quarterback keep that picked up a medium little type of gain. I think they blocked up Jerry pretty well there, and they had some success with kind of the read option, with kind of the zone read for the quarterback, and we know that they like to utilize that a lot. Followed up with a blitz that the Lions sent, but ultimately the pass was out there, was thrown in the out route. Now, I thought Cam Sutton stopped it short of the first down, so it would have been like a fourth down because they had their sack, but they didn't move him back. And then they had a short little run, and then they threw this pass, which looked like to me a yard short, which where, Sutton wrapped him. I don't know if he would have got through it in a real game, but they ultimately just kept going with the drive, so they were just kind of like, it was a first down. So, they kept moving with the drive. Then it was Charles Harris who you saw pop it to the backfield, but that's because they tossed it outside, and it was Cam Sutton. I was really impressed. He stepped up, set the edge really strong on the run, and basically stopped it. He willing to stick his nose in there, and we know that, that Pittsburgh background, that man is willing to stick his nose in there. Quarterback read type of keep, and this time he got a touchdown, but I think Kirby Joseph technically had the tackle. He was fired up. Probably would have brought him out at about the 2-yard line, but, the quarterback could have broken the tackle. I don't know. It was, again, pretty tight, but I would say it was pretty good for the defense. Like, it wasn't like they gave up a wide-open play. They really made them work, and a couple of these plays were really close, and there was some negatives that they forced in there as well, so that was good. Onto the offense, they kind of picked up right where they left off immediately. First off, start off with golf hitting a stir progression. They kind of ran that, stick flat look where they go flat, stick, flat, and it started off with that. Quick pass, drop back, flat, didn't like it, came to stick, didn't like it, and kind of gave a little no look to Amon-Ra St. Brown, kind of just sitting down, hitching right down in the middle of the defense, picking up a nice little zone pickup. Then they came out in a 13 personnel look, which means 3 tight ends, and this was really cool because this had Laporta on the field. You had all the tight ends, Brock Wright, James Mitchell all out there, and they were spread out. Brought him in, and ultimately what they did is they ran a little bit of a play action, and they tried to isolate Sam Laporta, a linebacker. He ran an out route. I thought he ran it pretty well and got some space, but Goff didn't like it. He didn't like the window, so he ultimately just took off, and it probably would have been a couple-yard loss on the play, so he took off towards the sideline. But it was cool to see they try to isolate Laporta one-on-one down there in that area, about 10 yards out. They try to isolate him one-on-one to go get that matchup, and for the most part, we've seen that a lot last year. Like, you think to the Patriots game, there would be times where we would isolate Amon-Ra St. Brown on an island. We'd try to motion first, give him some leverage. Then we'd isolate him one-on-one, and the Lions would run a boot, and they'd roll that way, and he'd have to just beat his guy. This time, they basically did the same thing. We're like, we're going to get you one-on-one, and you got to beat him. This is why I think they're going to lean into the receiving side for him, and he'll be more productive as a receiving tight end than usually tight ends are, because they're doing things like this with him. So even though it was incomplete, or there was no pass, it was cool to see that they tried that on that play. That followed up with an Amon-Ra St. Brown, kind of like a flat completion. Great pass protection on the play. It was only a 3-man rush, but this would have picked up a first down. I shouldn't say flat. It was more like a little bit of like a drag over the middle of the field. I think it would have picked up a first round. Then they went to a split zone look, which probably only got a yard. I mean, this was one of those examples. There was really good push, but he didn't end up hitting a hole, and ultimately the linebackers kind of just brought him down at the line. I couldn't really tell live what really happened there. Did he miss a hole? Was it a blown block? What really happened there? But it looked like better movement than what it actually resulted in. And then to finish it off, the offense said, let's stop playing around. Let's punch this in. Let's get Jahmyr Gibbs into the flat. Roll out. Jahmyr Gibbs walked into the end zone for a touchdown. So then he got his hands on it. Now back to the defense. This time it was the second team defense that was on the field. We got to see guys like Romeo Okwara, James Houston on the field. Broderick Martin now came in at the nose tackle. Josh Pascal and John Kaminsky. Oh my goodness, that is such a fun duo to watch. John Kaminsky and Pascal on the field together. I was like,
it's about to go down.
That's how I was feeling watching that. And it started off with exactly that man, Josh Pascal. He's at a strong camp. He did it again today. Josh Pascal, very first play, run stop. Now, what was big here is next to him, that big man, Broderick Martin, was playing, I believe he was in a zero technique, couldn't really tell, but he was playing 2-gap right on the center, so he was holding the center, but they went to a run, and Josh Pascal immediately made a play in the backfield. But trust me, we're going to say his name at least one more time into this. The next play, they scored a touchdown, and this was having Colin Johnson matched up man-to-man against Starling Thomas. Starling contested well. The coaches seemed to be, pretty pleased with how he contested it, and they didn't think his feet were were inbounds. The ref said it was. They said touchdown, but he contested it really well. It was also just a beautiful ball that was dropped in a bucket against a 6'6" receiver on the play. Now, that continued. The defense continued to play a little bit here. John Kaminsky came up with the sack. That was great. Again, see the guys on the field at the same time was outstanding. They were getting some edge work. So he comes up with the sack. Next play, Julian comes in. He's working some edge work. They go back to Starling Thomas, but Thomas broke on this one, a little comeback route, broke it up, pass breakup. Although, before this ball even got out of his hands, it was a sack by guess who? Josh Paschal. Beat the guard immediately, had a sack on the play. Then he threw it. He beat, I think, the right guard. Then he threw the ball, and yeah, he broke it up. That was cool too, but the play was already dead because Josh Paschal would have had an immediate sack once again. The defensive line, it was cool to see them start to really cook right here. I mean, we got a strong offensive line, but they started to really cook here. James Houston with a tackle for loss. Backside of his own run, we've seen this a lot in camp. Fast eyes, fast recognition, shoots down. We know that he's a freakish athlete, so if he's reacting like that with fast eyes, you're going to get negatives. That's exactly what you got, especially if there's not an immediate hole. If we clog up immediate holes or push the line back or Broderick is sitting there two-gapping somebody and you allow that running back to just go like this for a second and you're leaving him unblocked, he's too darn fast to unblock off the edge for you to hesitate. You got to hit your hole and go. Because in this play, that did not happen. And James Houston was right there to shut that thing down. Followed up by another touchdown given up here. And this was, again, a quarterback read. This one, he had some room and kind of ran into the end zone on this one. So that one wasn't necessarily great. Then on the field, we started to see Levi Onwuzurike get some snaps. Chris Smith got onto the field a little bit. But it was Tay Hayes. They threw kind of like a slot fade. Tay Hayes was caught in trail, probably trying to set up a pick play or something. But what you liked is didn't panic. He ran through the football, ran through the receiver, did not turn his eyes back, did not get called for PI, arrived at the right time, played through the ball, jarred it loose, pass breakup. It was a beautiful play by Tay Hayes to play in trail like that and break the ball up through his hands. Now the offense got back on the field. Nate Sudfeld started off by a throwback screen. You know, looks right, kind of comes back to Jahmyr Gibbs. You saw bop, bop, quick, and then he just walked into the end zone. I mean, it was like that. He made a couple like stabs, bop, bop. He did boppity bop. And then all of a sudden, it was like, oh, he's cleared up. And then he just walked to the end zone. He like literally started walking 10 yards out because it was so quick. The cuts that he made, juked himself out of the blocks, and then he just walked into the end zone. It was like, okay, yeah, that dude's different. You know, that guy just moves a little bit different. Followed by two ugly plays. A muff snap from under center. I don't know if it was on Sudfeld or the snap, but it was a muff snap. And then another muff snap, and this was from a shotgun spot. And the Lions were just like, okay, let's just go to the next unit. And I get that. It was kind of rough to see that for back-to-back plays. There you had a Fetty at right tackle, Nelson at left tackle. But they moved on to the final unit to finish this thing up. They actually went back to Sudfeld, but they went back now to Adrian Martinez. Short little run, little cutback run for Mohamed Ibrahim, like I touched on, a lot of zone rushing. Then it was that man, Jermar Jefferson, baby. Yes, sir, Jermar Jefferson running it into the end zone. Biggest takeaway from this play, though, Trey Quinn. He blocked like Amon-Ra St. Brown. We motion our guys in line. They'll kind of line like a tight end, and then they'll step inside. Sometimes we do this for release, where we'll have them lined in a timeline. We'll line to the slot, and they'll release through the tight end spot, and it'll switch matchups, and we're able to create leverage. Sometimes you do that, but if you're going to do that, you also have to be able to sell it to block. Trey Quinn stepped in from a tight alignment, like a tight end alignment, stepped inside the tackle box, and just hammered a dude. Now, he didn't run him over, but he hammered him. And I said to me, I was like, man, that was a nice block. And that continued with James Mitchell battling downfield. Just sprung a huge hole right behind it. And it was Jermar Jefferson running through the tackle and falling into the end zone. It was beautiful. But it started off with that man, Trey Quinn, picking up an amazing block, like a St. Brown type of block, with a lot of physicality, just stepping in there and doing the dirty work, if you will. So that punched it into the end zone, and then Sudfeld got back out there. It started off with a sack, which I believe was given up by Logan Stenberg on the play. That's who I have listed there, number 71. I believe that's who that is. And then finally, on the last play, it was another sack, and it was unblocked on this one. He kind of late at the end threw it up to Brock, but the play was basically dead. It was kind of a half-hearted to throw into the end zone. It was over his head, but it was a sack on another unblocked play. So the bottom there, it was kind of ugly to finish. You know, the second, third string unit had some ugly in there with the offensive line, things like that. But for the most part, I mean, there was also a lot of really good in there. And, man, this was a heck of a practice to watch. I think a lot of players did really well today, man. Some of the young guys started to show some things. Laporta and Gibbs continue to, but I'm going to leave it right there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Before we get out of here, again, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor of today's video, BetUS. Again, you can sign up with the referral link in the description. At least a $100 deposit gives you a 125% match. You can deposit less than that if you would like, but that's just kind of the offer that you have there. On top of that, again, they have the great customer service, whether that's live chat, email. There's a lot of ways to get in contact with customer service if you need that as well. So click that link. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.